The story begins at a large university in California, renowned for conducting numerous experiments aimed at benefiting humanity. In this setting, we are introduced to Zoe, a dedicated scientist working tirelessly with her team. Zoe's closest friend, Frank, was always by her side, supporting her in their shared endeavors. Zoe and her team were conducting experiments on a dog, attempting to inject certain strange liquids into its body. Unfortunately, these liquids were not working as intended, leading to the experiment's failure. The next day, a new team member, Eva, joins them. Eva is a camera operator, tasked with recording their experiments and maintaining proper documentation. As Eva interviews Zoe and Frank about their work, the two express cautious optimism, feeling a glimmer of hope after days of effort. Frank explains that they had developed a white liquid capable of reviving living beings. This liquid had its own stimulation power, designed to function within another body. This breakthrough filled the team with confidence that the liquid could work on their test subject. After planning everything meticulously, Zoe stayed late at the lab that night, continuing her work. She was startled when her friend Tyson arrived unexpectedly. Initially, he scared her as a joke but had actually brought her dinner. The two shared a pleasant meal, during which Zoe confided her future plans. She intended to marry Frank once their experiment succeeded. Tyson, secretly harboring feelings for Zoe, felt dejected hearing this, though he kept his emotions hidden. Zoe, unaware of Tyson's feelings, remained focused on her work. The following day, the entire team gathered and injected the liquid into the body of a deceased dog. This time, to their astonishment, the liquid worked. The dead dog miraculously came back to life. The revived dog began responding surprisingly well, leaving everyone in the team astonished. This confirmed that their experiment was working. However, the team decided to limit their trials to animals for now, as further safety reports were required before progressing to human experimentation. Their focus remained on ensuring the serum's complete safety and reliability. Later, Zoe is shown sleeping, but her rest is disturbed by strange visions. In her dream, she sees a house engulfed in flames, with herself trapped inside, burning. These recurring nightmares deeply disturbed Zoe, leaving her mentally unsettled. Waking up in distress, she was comforted by Frank, who reassured her and advised her to stop dwelling on these troubling dreams. It was evident that Zoe had been experiencing these nightmares frequently, disrupting her sleep. The next day, the team continued experimenting on the same dog, which had been blind. Upon injecting the serum, the dog not only came back to life but also regained its eyesight. This breakthrough revealed an unexpected property of the serum. It not only revived life but also healed disabilities. The once dead dog was now fully functional, behaving like a normal dog. This remarkable success left the entire team ecstatic, and they celebrated their achievement. However, when Zoe and Frank decided to keep the dog at home, its behavior became increasingly peculiar. Unlike a normal dog, it neither barked nor appeared active. Gradually, the dog's mobility diminished entirely, and it began sitting still, eerily staring at the team members for long periods. One night, while Zoe was asleep, the dog climbed onto her bed and stared intensely at her, as if trying to communicate something it couldn't express. The next day, concerned about the dog's condition, the team decided to run further tests to determine if there was any internal issue, such as bleeding or other complications. When the team conducted an MRI scan of the dog, they discovered something alarming. The liquid they had injected was concentrated solely in the dog's brain. Instead of spreading throughout the body as designed, the serum was only activating the brain. This was a critical flaw, as the liquid had been engineered to work uniformly across the body. Realizing the gravity of this anomaly, the team decided to dedicate more time to researching the issue. Meanwhile, Miles, another team member, took the dog home for temporary observation. He locked the dog in a cage and went to have dinner. However, the dog's behavior took a sinister turn. Staring intensely at its surroundings, the dog broke free from the cage, creating chaos throughout the house. When Miles entered the kitchen, he found everything in disarray. Suddenly, the dog, now highly aggressive, attacked him. Miles barely escaped, confused and terrified by the dog's violent behavior. The next day, Miles reported the incident to the team, warning them about the dog's drastic behavioral changes. However, none of the team members believed him. They insisted the dog had been calm and docile during their observations and dismissed Miles's claims as an overreaction or an attempt to seek attention. Determined to uncover the truth, Frank conducted a thorough examination of the dog's body and made a shocking discovery. The dog's cells were mutating rapidly and no longer resembled normal canine cells. These cellular changes raised serious questions about the long-term effects of the serum. Frank realized they needed more in-depth research to understand the full implications. Frank then visited the headquarters of the company funding their experiments to report their findings. Meeting with the project's head, he faced harsh criticism. The head scolded Frank for deviating from their initial agreement, which had been to use the serum only on comatose patients. She accused him of conducting unauthorized and unethical experiments. In his defense, Frank argued that their work, though unconventional, was necessary to refine the serum. He emphasized that their ultimate goal was to benefit humanity and that, once perfected, the serum could revolutionize medicine. Despite his justification, tensions between Frank and the funding organization heightened, as the risks of the experiment became increasingly apparent. The conversation takes a serious turn when Frank suggests that their research could one day heal even the dead, but the project head dismisses his optimism, stating that it might be too late. She reveals that the laboratory and all associated experiments have been sold to another party. This news shocks Frank, who argues passionately that the experiment cannot be sold off, as they have invested years of effort into it. Despite his pleas, the project head remains unmoved. Meanwhile, at the lab, the rest of the team, including Zoe, is focused on their experiment. Suddenly, officials arrive and declare a shutdown of the entire project. They confiscate all equipment and data, ordering everyone to vacate the premises. Zoe tries to reason with them, but their orders are non-negotiable, as they come from higher authorities. Eva, observing the chaos, seizes the opportunity to steal an access key card and sneaks out with the dog. Unnoticed by anyone, she escapes from the lab. Back inside, Frank returns to find the team dejected and hopeless, as they no longer have a lab or the equipment necessary to continue their work. Suspicion arises among the group that Eva might have leaked footage of their experiments, leading to the project's shutdown. However, Eva denies this, claiming she never released any footage. The group remains puzzled about how the information was leaked. Frank steps in to calm everyone, emphasizing that this is not the time to argue among themselves. Instead, they must find a way to complete their experiment. Eva then reveals the stolen key card, which could grant them access to the lab once again. Additionally, Zoe mentions that she still has a small amount of the serum stored, which they could use to produce more. Without wasting time, Eva takes the key card and sneaks back into the lab, using it to unlock a back entrance. She opens the door for the rest of the team, who quickly follow her inside. Together, they work to restart the laboratory systems, determined to finish what they started before it's too late. The team, now illegally working in the lab, began their experiment to prove the serum's efficacy. They secured the previously revived dog in a cage and prepared a new subject, a dead dog, for the serum injection. After administering the serum, they needed to deliver an electric shock to stimulate the body. Zoe quickly moved to activate the lever on the equipment, but she was wearing jewelry that inadvertently conducted electricity. A sudden, powerful surge shocked her, and tragically, Zoe was killed on the spot. The incident left the team in shock, especially Frank, who was devastated by Zoe's death. Overwhelmed by grief and desperation, Frank proposed an unthinkable idea, using the serum to bring Zoe back to life. The team initially resisted, pointing out that the serum had only been tested on animals, and they had no way of predicting its effects on humans. However, Frank pleaded with them, urging them to save Zoe before it was too late. Reluctantly, the team agreed. Frank carefully injected the serum into Zoe's lifeless body, and the team prepared to administer the necessary shocks to restart her heart. As they worked, the CCTV monitor showed a security guard approaching the lab. In a panic, the team shut down all the equipment and hid in the shadows. After a tense few minutes, the guard left, allowing them to resume their work. When the shocks were delivered, the unexpected happened. Zoe's body began to respond. Frank rushed to the stretcher and was overjoyed to see Zoe sitting upright, alive again. However, something about her was disturbingly different. Her behavior was cold and unnerving, and she stared at Frank with an intensity that felt unnatural. Frank removed the sheet covering Zoe's body, hoping to comfort her, but her gaze remained fixed on him, unblinking and unsettling. Her demeanor had completely changed. She no longer seemed like the Zoe they knew. Despite this, Frank was overwhelmed with happiness that his love was alive again, ignoring the eerie transformation in her behavior. Unbeknownst to the team, Zoe's revival marked the beginning of a far more dangerous and unpredictable series of events. Frank, overwhelmed by Zoe's strange behavior and new abilities, brought her home, believing they could start fresh. However, he quickly realized this was not the same Zoe he had loved. Her personality had shifted, and she now possessed extraordinary, unsettling powers. During a moment at home, Zoe shocked Frank by speaking aloud the very thoughts running through his mind. He was horrified. How could she know? It became clear that Zoe had developed telepathic abilities. Additionally, she demonstrated telekinetic powers, effortlessly moving objects with her mind. These abilities defied all scientific explanation and were more akin to supernatural phenomena. Zoe's transformation didn't stop at her powers. Her body underwent further physical changes. Her fingertips turned an eerie blue, a clear sign that the serum was fundamentally altering her at a cellular level. The team's MRI scans had confirmed that her body cells were mutating into something non-human. She was evolving into an entirely new creature, one that science had never encountered. As Zoe stood before a mirror, it shattered spontaneously, and her reflection revealed two faces, one her own, and the other a monstrous visage. This duality frightened her, but also hinted at the internal battle raging within her. The once docile experimental dog entered the room and barked at her aggressively. Zoe, consumed by her growing powers and uncontrollable instincts, used her telekinesis to kill the dog in a horrific manner, proving she was now a lethal force. Confronted by the horrifying incident, Zoe confided in Frank. She explained that something extraordinary and terrifying had happened to her during her death. She recalled being in a strange, otherworldly place, a dark void where she could hear and feel the thoughts of countless people. She described it as being trapped for what felt like an eternity. Frank dismissed her experience as a hallucination, pointing out that she had only been clinically dead for a few minutes before being revived. However, Zoe insisted it felt real, as if she had crossed into a dimension beyond human understanding. Her body began to reject the serum in a violent way. She vomited a thick, white liquid, the very serum that had brought her back to life. It was clear the substance had taken over her body completely, reshaping her into something beyond human comprehension. Frank, though terrified, couldn't abandon Zoe. But he knew they were running out of time. Zoe's abilities and transformations were spiraling out of control, and the serum's effects seemed irreversible. The team would need to make a critical decision: try to save Zoe or find a way to stop her before she became an unstoppable threat. "Relax," Frank said as he administered an injection to Zoe to help her calm down and fall unconscious, as her mental state was deteriorating rapidly after the experiment. Meanwhile, Ava approached Zoe to examine her body thoroughly. However, Zoe's heightened senses immediately detected Ava's intentions. Suddenly, Zoe trapped Ava in a strange nightmare, one of the recurring nightmares Zoe had been experiencing every night. Ava was confused and disoriented as she found herself in the middle of a burning apartment. In front of her stood a young girl, urging her to remain calm. Ava felt as though she was genuinely engulfed by the raging fire. Panicking, she opened her eyes and found herself back in reality, surrounded by her teammates who were trying to wake her up. Ava described the entire incident, explaining how Zoe had pulled her into a nightmare that felt frighteningly real. The marks of burns on Ava's hands made it evident that she had truly experienced something physical within the nightmare. This confirmed that it was all a result of Zoe's altered mental state and abilities. It was then revealed that Zoe's recurring nightmares were rooted in a traumatic incident from her childhood when she lived in an apartment. A devastating fire had broken out, claiming the lives of her parents. Since then, Zoe had been haunted by these memories. However, her condition now seemed worse than ever. The burn marks on Ava's hands were soon healed, but Frank and his team noted something crucial: Zoe's mental capabilities had increased significantly since the serum was administered. The same had happened with the experimental dog, but they had underestimated the effects on an animal. Frank insisted that the team needed to monitor Zoe closely. Later, Zoe was shown levitating in midair, her eyes completely blackened, making her appear more like a demonic figure than a human. Suddenly, all the electricity in the lab went out. Tyson rushed to Zoe's room to find her, but she was nowhere to be seen. After searching the entire room, Zoe appeared before him. For reasons unknown, Zoe began moving closer to Tyson. She said in a chilling tone, "I've read your mind, and I know you've thought about being intimate with me." Tyson froze in terror as Zoe drew him closer, her presence overwhelming and her abilities now completely out of control. But Tyson was scared and pushed Zoe away, which infuriated her. Her eyes turned black again, and using her mental powers, she trapped Tyson inside a cupboard and crushed it completely. Tyson was badly injured inside, and his blood started spilling out. Zoe returned to her place, trying to appear normal, and lay down to sleep. Later, when Frank and the others arrived, they couldn't find Tyson anywhere. They searched the entire facility, but there was no trace of him. When they approached Zoe, she was behaving normally as if nothing had happened. However, Ava and Miles started to suspect that Zoe was hiding something, possibly responsible for Tyson's disappearance. Frank continued searching for Tyson. Zoe had a strange smile on her face, which didn't go unnoticed by Ava and Miles. Miles went directly to her and asked, "What did you do to my friend?" Zoe simply replied, "The same thing will happen to all of you." Using her powers, she took a piece of the wall and shoved it into Miles' mouth, preventing him from breathing. Miles struggled for air and died right there. Zoe, now fully in control, vanished and moved rapidly from one place to another. She started attacking Frank and Ava, hurling objects around the room. Frank and Ava managed to escape and took refuge in another chamber. Inside, there were many dead bodies, but these bodies suddenly came to life and began attacking them. Frank now understood that everything happening was a result of the serum, so he quickly began working on creating an injection that could paralyze the bodies and neutralize the effects of the serum. Frank explained the steps for creating the injection to Ava, telling her they couldn't let Zoe escape, as she would continue to wreak havoc. After ensuring Ava was safe in a secure place, Frank took the injection and went straight to Zoe. Zoe, now appearing more dangerous, covered a significant distance in just a few seconds. She read Adam's mind and began questioning him about the injection. Adam explained that it was a tranquilizer that he wanted to take himself. In fear, he placed the injection down, but Zoe then turned to Frank and asked, "How much do you love me?" Frank, despite everything, responded that he loved her deeply, no matter what happened. Wanting to know the truth, Zoe read Frank's mind, but she grew furious and, with her powers, ripped his body apart, killing him instantly. Now, only Ava remained, and she quickly began preparing the injections Frank had explained to her. Zoe, meanwhile, entered the laboratory and injected the remaining white liquid into her mind, significantly increasing her powers. She then used her newfound abilities to locate Ava and made her way to her. Ava had hidden 2 injections in a safe place and decided to confront Zoe directly. As Zoe attempted to read Ava's mind, Ava deliberately manipulated her thoughts to prevent Zoe from discovering the location of the injections. In a fit of rage, Zoe used her powers to beat Ava and threw her to the ground. Despite being injured, Ava managed to escape and lock the door behind her. Ava soon realized that she had found herself trapped inside the same nightmare world Zoe had lived through as a child. There was fire everywhere, and the real Zoe was about to open the door to escape. Ava rushed to find the younger version of Zoe and discovered a matchbox in her hand. This revealed that years ago, Zoe had caused the fire in the apartment, a truth she had never shared with anyone. Ava told young Zoe that she could save some people, but to do so, she would need to open the door. After much hesitation, the younger Zoe opened the door, allowing Ava to escape from the nightmare world. Back in reality, it was revealed that Ava had injected Zoe with the serum Frank had prepared, in a final attempt to end Zoe's reign of terror. And with an apology, Ava injected the second syringe into Zoe's throat. The injection was so powerful that Zoe immediately died, and her body was completely paralyzed. Security forces had arrived in the laboratory, trying to rescue them. As one officer grabbed Ava, she confessed, saying, "I killed Zoe because she became out of control, and this was the worst phase of our experiment." But when Ava glanced toward Zoe, her dead body was suddenly missing. It was revealed that the officer was none other than Zoe herself. Zoe had somehow managed to grab Ava and killed her in a brutal manner. In the final scene, Zoe was shown injecting the same white liquid into Frank's mind. Her eyes turned black once again, and she was about to turn Frank into someone like herself. She also injected her own blood into his body. And with that, the story ends.